Media fact-checker. Donald Trump criticizes Australia and allies over Iran war support and Strait of Hormuz security. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump stated at a White House press conference, February 2024, that Australia was not great and he was a little surprised by its response to the US-Israel war on Iran. Trump described the Middle East conflict as Little League and questioned whether Australia and Europe would support the US in a larger conflict, saying, "I don't think they're going to be there." Australia has sent a surveillance aircraft and missiles to the UAE to help defend it from Iranian attacks, as reported by Newscomau and ABC. Trump criticized UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer for offering to send aircraft carriers when the war is over, calling them toys compared to US carriers. Trump claimed Iran was begging to make a deal and would face its worst nightmare if it did not agree to America's 15-point ceasefire proposal, as reported by ABC and Newscomau. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscomau and ABC report Trump criticized Australia for not helping secure the Strait of Hormuz, but ABC states Australia signed a joint statement offering to contribute to efforts to protect the waterway, with Defense Minister Richard Marles saying discussions about next steps were ongoing. ABC reports Trump claimed Iran had offered 8 big boats of oil as a gesture of goodwill, but Iran has not confirmed any such offer. Newscomau and ABC report Trump described the Iran war as Little League, but ABC reports Trump also threatened to keep blowing them away if Iran did not agree to the ceasefire proposal. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Fungal infection outbreak at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital linked to hospital balcony and construction. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 6 transplant patients in Ward 9E at Royal Prince Alfred Hospital were diagnosed with aspergillosis mold infection in November and December 2025. 2 patients died directly from the aspergillosis infection, and a third infected patient later died from multi-organ failure due to sepsis, not the fungal infection. A hospital balcony near ongoing construction works was identified as the probable source of the fungal spores, with airborne spores linked to construction activities. The outbreak was investigated by senior transplant specialists and the report was handed to NSW Chief Health Officer Kerry Chant. NSW Health announced 4 reforms, including increased air sampling and a fungal surveillance committee, all accepted by health authorities. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the 2 sources. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Coroner's inquest into influencers' freebirth death and birthkeeper's refusal to testify. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stacey Warner-Key, 30, died from a postpartum hemorrhage and cardiac arrest after a freebirth at home on September 29, 2025. Emily Lowell, known as the authentic birthkeeper, was present during Stacey Warner-Key's home birth and when 000 was called. A coroner's inquest into Warner-Key's death is proposed for mid-June 2026, with a directions hearing held on May 7, 2026. Emily Lowell has refused to provide a statement to the coroner's investigation, citing privilege against self-incrimination. Victoria's Health Complaints Commissioner issued an interim ban on Emily Lowell from providing general health services in October 2025, pending investigation. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the inquest was adjourned until June without specifying a date, while Newscomau specifies June 15 to 19, 2026. ABC mentions the Health Complaints Commissioner's ban is indefinite pending investigation, while Newscomau states it expires on April 7, 2026. ABC does not mention the exact date of the directions hearing, while Newscomau states it was held on May 7, 2026. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's record-breaking ODI win over West Indies in Women's Cricket Series. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia defeated West Indies by 103 runs in a women's ODI in St Kitts, AEDT, on Saturday. Australia scored 341 runs from 49.5 overs, setting a record women's ODI team total in the Caribbean. Phoebe Litchfield top-scored for Australia with 77 runs, and 5 other teammates reached the 40s. West Indies were restricted to 238 runs all out in 50 overs. Stephanie Taylor scored her first ODI century since 2021 with 105 not out from 129 balls. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the second ODI is on Sunday, but ABC says it is on Monday. The Guardian mentions Australia's top order shared a 75-run stand, while ABC does not specify this detail. The Guardian provides specific scores for Molyneux, 47, and Carey, 49, but ABC omits these figures. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Federal government urges Fair Work Commission for above-inflation minimum wage hike amid cost of living pressures. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The federal government submitted to the Fair Work Commission requesting an economically sustainable real wage increase for minimum and award wage workers in 2026. 2.7 million Australians earn the national minimum wage or award wages, accounting for about a quarter of the workforce, 25%. The current minimum wage is $175.40 per week, higher than when the Albanese government took office in May 2022. The Fair Work Commission's 2025 determination granted a 3.5% increase, but inflation has since risen to 3.3% to 3.7%, February 2026 figures. Employment Minister Amanda Rishworth and Treasurer Jim Chalmers made the submission to the Fair Work Commission's annual wage review. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the Fair Work Commission's 2025 determination declared this inflationary episode is now over and chose 3.5%, but Newscomau does not mention this specific claim. ABC states the government has not sought a specific number for the wage increase, while Newscomau implies the government's submission is more prescriptive about economically sustainable increases tied to RBA targets. ABC quotes ACCI's 3.5% ask but does not mention the Business Council of Australia's productivity-backed stance, which Newscomau omits entirely. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NSW government considering banning strata manager commissions to improve transparency and affordability. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Peter Achterstraat is the head of the NSW Productivity and Equality Commission and led the report recommending changes to strata manager commissions. The NSW Productivity Commission report received over 550 submissions from apartment owners and industry stakeholders. Nearly a quarter, 25%, of NSW residents live in residential strata schemes, including apartments, townhouses, villas, and duplexes. By 2041, around half of all homes in Sydney are expected to be strata dwellings. Strata managers can legally receive commissions for new contracts, including insurance policies and other services, creating a conflict of interest. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian and SMH both report that some strata managers are resistant to reform, but The Guardian emphasises urgency due to affordability for first-time buyers, while the SMH focuses on industry pushback and legal disputes. The ABC and SMH both mention that commissions are legal but problematic, but the SMH provides specific examples of commissions being 15 to 25% of firms' revenue, while the ABC does not quantify this. The Guardian and SMH both cite case studies of commissions growing significantly over time, but The Guardian's case study shows commissions growing from $8,000 to $27,000, while the SMH does not provide a similar specific figure for comparison. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Former AFL player Nick Stevens convicted of fraud in pool installation scheme. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nick Stevens was found guilty on 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document in Victoria's County Court, ABC News. Stevens was charged in 2019 for allegedly defrauding 6 families in Mildura, Victoria, out of $170,000 to $171,000 for pools they never received or received illegally, ABC News. The 6 families were left with either no pools, giant holes in their backyards, or shoddily installed pools without permits, ABC News. Stevens pleaded not guilty to all 14 fraud-related charges, ABC News. Judge Fiona Todd remanded Stevens in custody until his plea hearing on May 21, 2024, ABC News. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Stevens was found guilty on 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document, while News reports he was found guilty of 13 charges of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document. ABC states Stevens was found not guilty on 1 charge of obtaining a financial advantage by deception relating to the first victim, but News does not mention this acquittal. ABC reports Stevens was found guilty on 12 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document, while News reports he was charged with 13 counts of obtaining a financial advantage by deception and 1 charge of using a false document. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Japanese-owned bulk carrier Iron Maiden escapes Strait of Hormuz blockade during Middle East conflict. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Japanese-owned bulk carrier named Iron Maiden escaped Iran's blockade of the Strait of Hormuz on March 5, 2024, after sailing through at night with its transponder broadcasting China owner. Iron Maiden was moored in Dubai's Jebel Ali commercial port, UAE, when the conflict erupted on February 28, 2024, following US-Israel airstrikes on Iran. The ship cut off its tracking signal while passing through the Strait of Hormuz on March 5 and reactivated it after exiting the waterway. Iron Maiden is expected to arrive in Western Australia's Kwinana port, off Jailton, on March 21, 2024, with no cargo. Traffic through the Strait of Hormuz slowed significantly due to fears of Iranian attacks on vessels, with insurance premiums spiking. But not all outlets told the same story. News states the Iron Maiden is the first vessel to dock in Western Australia amid the fuel crisis, while ABC does not explicitly claim it is the first. News mentions emergency measures, carpooling, WFH, as imminent, but ABC frames them as contingency plans not yet required. ABC cites a US deployment of 3,000 troops from the 82nd Airborne Division, which is not mentioned in News. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Ilia Malinin's redemption at the 2024 World Figure Skating Championships after Olympic collapse. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Ilia Malinin won his 3rd straight World Figure Skating Championship on Saturday at Prague's O2 Arena. Malinin scored a personal best 111.29 in the short program, leading by over 9 points after Thursday's session. In the free skate, Malinin scored 218.11 to finish with a total of 329.40 points, winning comfortably ahead of Yumi Kagiyama, 306.67, and Shun Soto, 288.54. Malinin landed 5 quadruple jumps in his free program, including a quad-toe triple-toe combination and a backflip. A month prior, Malinin fell twice in his Olympic free skate in Milan, dropping from 1st to 8th place. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Malinin's free skate score was 218.11, while Article 2 does not mention this specific score. Article 1 describes Malinin's free skate as packed with difficulty, landing 5 quadruple jumps, but Article 2 does not detail the exact jumps landed in the free skate. Article 1 mentions Malinin's free skate music was not specified, while Article 2 does not mention music at all. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Qantas Jetstar reduces NZ flights due to rising jet fuel prices amid global fuel crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Jetstar NZ has reduced some trans-Tasman flights due to rising jet fuel costs linked to the Middle East conflict. Over 55 flights have been cut from the Auckland-Sydney and Sydney-Queenstown routes, via Melbourne, by Jetstar NZ. All impacted passengers have been contacted directly, with most offered same-day travel alternatives. Energy Minister Chris Bowen reported 8% of Australian service stations, 560+ stations, were without one or more fuel grades on a given day. The Australian government temporarily lowered the diesel flashpoint from 61.5C to 60.5C to increase supply options. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau reports 55+ flights cut from Jetstar NZ routes, while ABC states 12% of services, unspecified total flights, are impacted. News Kamau claims 560+ Australian service stations lacked fuel on a given day, but ABC does not provide this specific number. News Kamau states Air New Zealand reduced flights due to unprecedented volatility, indirectly, while ABC explicitly cites a 5% reduction between March 16 and May 3. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arson attack on Jewish ambulances in London and police investigation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 men aged 45 and 47 were arrested on Wednesday on suspicion of arson with intent to endanger life in connection with the attack. The attack occurred at approximately 1:45 a.m. on Monday near Highfield Road in Golders Green, London, near the Matchsyke Hadath Synagogue. 4 ambulances belonging to the Jewish charity Hatzolah Northwest were set on fire during the incident. The Metropolitan Police are treating the incident as an anti-Semitic hate crime and counter-terrorism officers are leading the investigation. CCTV footage suggests at least 3 people were involved in the attack, though only 2 men have been arrested so far. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian mentions the men were released on bail until April, while ABC does not mention bail conditions or release status. ABC states the arrests were made this morning, Wednesday, but The Guardian does not specify the exact timing of the arrests beyond on Wednesday. ABC implies the arrests were a breakthrough but does not quote Commander Flanagan using those exact words, while The Guardian directly quotes her calling it an important breakthrough. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. F1 safety crisis after Oliver Bearman's high-speed crash at Japanese Grand Prix. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Oliver Bearman crashed at the Japanese Grand Prix, Suzuka, after evading Franco Colapinto's Alpine due to a closing speed of 50 km/h, 31 mph. Bearman's Haas was traveling at 307 km/h, 191 mph when he veered off track to avoid Colapinto's slower-moving car. The crash resulted in a 50G impact with barriers, leaving Bearman with only bruising and his car heavily damaged. Bearman was using boost mode, electrical energy deployment, while Colapinto was recovering energy, creating the speed differential. The FIA has confirmed it will review regulations before the Miami GP, next race in 5 weeks, with safety as top priority. But not all outlets told the same story. Guardian 1 states the closing speed was 50 km/h, while ABC does not specify the exact closing speed number but describes it as alarming. Guardian 1 mentions the FIA has been assiduous in monitoring safety over the first 3 races, but ABC does not reference this level of prior scrutiny. Guardian 3 calls the crash a scary moment for Bearman, while ABC describes him as limping away without using the word scary. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arsenal's 3-1 WSL win over Tottenham featuring Alessia Russo's hat-trick and league implications. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Arsenal defeated Tottenham 3-1 in the Women's Super League at the Emirates Stadium on Saturday. Alessia Russo scored a hat-trick in the first 27 minutes for Arsenal, including goals at 22nd, 29th, and 32nd minutes. Tottenham conceded twice in the opening 10 minutes, including a goal from Frida Lenhardsen Marnum's own net at 34 minutes. Arsenal's 25th and 26th goals came from Caitlin Ford and Steiner Blackstenius in the second half. Tottenham's manager Martin Ho previously warned about conceding 45 minutes of free football due to slow starts. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states Russo's hat-trick took her to 5 goals in 8 days, 25 contributions in 31 games, while Article 2 does not mention her goal tally beyond the match. Article 1 lists Russo's goals at 22, 29, and 32 minutes, but Article 2's live updates suggest goals at 11, 16, and 29 minutes, with a deflection in added time. Article 1 describes Russo's hat-trick as devastating first-half performance with goals in the first 22 minutes, while Article 2's live updates show her first goal at 11 minutes. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Arrest of Deklin Donnelly in Sydney grandfather's mistaken identity kidnapping and murder case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Deklin Jake Donnelly, 23, was arrested at a Seven Hills property on March 2024 and charged with murder and detain in company with intent to ransom occasioning bodily harm in relation to Chris Bagsarian's death. Chris Bagsarian, 85, was abducted from his North Ryde home on February 13 and his remains were found near a Pitt Town golf course on February 24. Gerard Andrews, 29, and Daniel Stevens, 24, were arrested and charged with kidnapping and murder of Chris Bagsarian on March 2024. Donnelly was found with an sawn-off shotgun under his bed during his arrest at the Seven Hills property. Donnelly was remanded in custody and did not apply for bail, with his next court appearance scheduled for May 22. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Newscomau describe Thurston's charge as a breach of a violence restraining order, but SMH specifies it was an apprehended violence order breach. Newscomau states Thurston was sentenced for an assault on a police officer in 2025, while SMH states she was serving a community corrections order for assaulting a police officer and an earlier breach of an apprehended domestic violence order. SMH states Donnelly was contracted to kidnap Dimitri Stepanyan's father, while ABC and Newscomau do not specify this detail. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's fuel crisis. Diesel standards relaxed amid widespread shortages and supply disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's diesel standards lowered from 61.5 degrees Celsius to 60.5 degrees Celsius flashpoint for 6 months to boost supply, ABC, Guardian. Energy Minister Chris Bowen announced the diesel standard adjustment on the 12th of April, 2024, ABC, Guardian. Hundreds of service stations across Australia lack at least one fuel type. NSW has 289 stations without fuel, ABC, Guardian. In NSW, 164 stations are without diesel, ABC, Guardian. Queensland has 55 stations without diesel and 35 without unleaded petrol, ABC, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports 289 NSW stations lack at least one fuel type out of 2,400 plus, while Guardian states 2,417 stations exist, No direct contradiction, but ABC's 2400 plus vs Guardian's 2417 total. ABC mentions 6 shipments cancelled in April with some replaced. Guardian only states 6 cancelled without replacement detail. ABC cites 162 Victorian stations with shortages out of 1600 plus. Guardian states 162 missing fuel but omits total stations. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Northern Territory records multiple deaths in custody within a week. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A 19-year-old man died from a serious stab wound in Katherine on Sunday evening, with police treating the incident as a death in custody due to his care by officers before death, ABC News Kamau. The Katherine stabbing victim was found in a vehicle with stab wounds by police around 6:45 p.m. on Sunday, after initially being unreachable at the scene, ABC News Kamau. An 18-year-old man with stab wounds was also found in a vehicle near the Katherine Field Hospital and airlifted to Darwin in a serious but stable condition, ABC News Kamau. A 19-year-old driver was arrested in the Katherine stabbing incident and remains in custody, ABC News Kamau. The Northern Territory recorded its 3rd death in custody in less than a week, following 2 other deaths in Darwin Correctional Centre and a police vehicle, ABC News Kamau, Guardian. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC, Article 1, states the 19-year-old Katherine victim was found in a vehicle nearby the scene, while News Kamau, Article 2, says the victim was found southeast of Darwin in Katherine. ABC, Article 3, reports the 25-year-old man was arrested after damaging window louvers and assaulting a woman, while Guardian, Article 4, does not mention the louvers. ABC, Article 5, states the 25-year-old man was in his 20s, while News Kamau, Article 2, and ABC, Article 1, state he was 19 years old. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's Matildas facing low-ranked teams in April 2024 FIFA Series ahead of 2027 World Cup. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Matildas will play in a FIFA Series 2026 friendly tournament in Nairobi, Kenya, starting April 2024. Australia's next matches are against Malawi, FIFA rank 153, followed by either India, 67, or Kenya, 134, depending on results. The Matildas are ranked 15th globally by FIFA as of the Asian Cup final loss to Japan on March 2024. Coach Joe Montemurro stated the team needs to play higher quality opponents in preparation for the 2027 Women's World Cup in Brazil. FIFA announced the Matildas' first matches since their 1-0 Asian Cup final loss to Japan on March 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states Football Australia's focus is on playing top 15 opponents, while The Guardian implies the April fixtures are not high quality given the opponents' rankings, 52+ spots below Australia. ABC mentions Malawi as a worthwhile challenge with top strikers, but The Guardian frames the matches as likely uncompetitive games. The Guardian suggests Montemurro may have to dig deeper into Australia's domestic stocks for players, while ABC only lists fringe Asian Cup players without mentioning deeper cuts. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian politician Andrew Hastie criticises US-Iran war strategy and economic fallout impacts on Australia. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Andrew Hastie, Liberal MP, criticised US President Donald Trump's huge miscalculation in the Iran war as of early March 2024. Andrew Hastie stated Iran has managed to pretty much hold the whole world economy to ransom due to the conflict. The war in Iran entered its second month by the time of reporting, March 2024. Andrew Hastie served as a Special Forces veteran and fought in the Middle East alongside Americans. Australia's fuel supply shortages are being addressed by government underwriting of additional cargoes, as of March 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports the government announced fuel cargo underwriting on Saturday, while Newscomau does not mention this specific timing or detail. ABC states Employment Minister Amanda Rishworth explicitly ruled out COVID-style work-from-home mandates, but Newscomau does not reference this statement. ABC mentions Treasury modelling for a gas levy with crossbench and union support, but Newscomau does not discuss this policy proposal. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Stephen Colbert to co-write a new Lord of the Rings film titled Shadow of the Past. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Stephen Colbert is co-writing a new Lord of the Rings movie titled The Lord of the Rings, Shadow of the Past with his son Peter McGee and Philippe Arboyans. The film will follow Sam, Merry, and Pippin retracing early steps of their original adventure, with Sam's daughter Eleanor discovering a long-buried secret about the War of the Ring. Peter Jackson announced Colbert's involvement in a video released on social media on April 2024. Colbert's The Late Show on CBS aired its final episode on May 21, 2024, after cancellation in July 2023. The film is the second of two upcoming Lord of the Rings movies from Warner Bros. Discovery and New Line Cinema, following The Lord of the Rings, The Hunt for Gollum released December 17, 2027. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1, ABC, does not mention the film's setting as 14 years after Frodo's passing, while Guardian 2 specifies this timeline. The Guardian's first article suggests the film may focus on Tom Bombadil as a central character, while Guardian 2 does not explicitly confirm this and frames it as a potential issue. Article 1, ABC, does not reference the political context of Colbert's show cancellation, while Guardian 2 explicitly ties it to Colbert's criticism of Paramount and Trump. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over pay and conditions, BBC content replaces flagship programs. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Over 2,000 ABC staff walked off the job for a 24-hour strike on Wednesday, the first in 20 years. ABC's flagship programs including *7.30*, *AM**, Radio National Breakfast*, *News Breakfast*, and *7 p.m. News Bulletins*, were replaced by BBC World Service content during the strike. The strike was triggered by a 60-40 staff vote rejecting a 10% total pay rise over 3 years, 3.5% in year 1, 3.25% in years 2 and 3. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks said staff costs account for 60% of the ABC's budget, and a higher offer would risk job cuts. Australia's annual inflation rate in January was 3.8%, with unions arguing the ABC's offer fell below inflation. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the strike was triggered by a 75% staff vote on the offer, while Article 2 does not mention this specific turnout percentage. Article 1 claims Marks said the offer was appropriately balanced and a higher offer would put ABC content in peril, but Article 2 frames this as Marks defending the budget constraints without using the word peril. Article 1 notes the MEAA characterized Marks' emails as threatening, while Article 2 does not include this direct quote or framing. This story was covered by The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US allows Russian oil tanker to deliver fuel to Cuba amid US blockade. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Russian-flagged tanker Anatoly Kolodkin is carrying approximately 650,000 to 730,000 barrels of Urals crude oil from Primorsk to Cuba's Matanzas port. The ship was tracked just off Cuba's eastern tip of Cuba, and expected to arrive by Tuesday local time, Matanzas port. Cuba has faced a de facto US oil blockade, with no oil imports for 3 months, leading to gasoline rationing and energy crises including island-wide blackouts. The US blocked Venezuelan oil shipments to Cuba and threatened sanctions on third countries supplying Cuba, causing Mexico to halt exports. Another Russian-origin vessel, the Hong Kong-flagged Seahorse, was previously rerouted from Cuba to Venezuela with 200,000 barrels of fuel. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports the tanker carries 650,000 barrels, while ABC states it carries about 730,000 barrels. The Guardian mentions the US temporarily lifted sanctions on Russia to improve oil flow after strikes on Iran, but ABC does not reference this. The Guardian highlights the US blocked Venezuelan oil shipments to Cuba in January 2024, while ABC does not specify the timing of this action. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government underwrites fuel imports amid Middle East tensions and shortages. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced new fuel security powers on Saturday to underwrite purchase of additional shiploads of fuel, petrol diesel, to address shortages during Middle East tensions. The government will amend the Export Finance and Insurance Corporation Act to grant new fuel security powers, with legislation introduced to Parliament on Monday. Shortages have been reported at hundreds of service stations, particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, with panic buying cited as a key factor. The government will use public funds to underwrite the financial risk of importing extra fuel, giving suppliers confidence to secure additional cargoes. Independent distributors have struggled to obtain enough supply from major companies, affecting regional Australia. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states shortages are particularly in New South Wales and Queensland, while The Guardian focuses on regional Australia without specifying those states. ABC reports the government has more than a month's worth of fuel in reserve, petrol and jet fuel, but The Guardian does not mention reserves or stockpiles. ABC frames the opposition's call as a 53% cut to the fuel excise, a 53-cent per litre tax, while The Guardian does not quantify the excise cut proposal. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Meta ordered to pay $375 million in New Mexico child exploitation case. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A New Mexico jury ordered Meta to pay $375 million in civil penalties for violating New Mexico's consumer protection laws under the Unfair Practices Act, 2024. The lawsuit was brought by New Mexico Attorney General Raul Torres's office in December 2023, following a 2-year Guardian investigation, April 2023, revealing Meta platforms enabled child sex trafficking. The trial lasted nearly 7 weeks, ABC, 6 weeks, with the jury deliberating for less than 1 day before ruling against Meta. Meta's internal documents and testimony revealed employees and child safety experts warned about risks on Meta's platforms, including encrypted messenger enabling grooming and CSAM exchange. Meta's 2023 decision to encrypt Facebook Messenger blocked law enforcement access to evidence in Operation Metafile, a sting operation leading to arrests of 3 men charged with preying on children. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the jury deliberated for about 1 day, while ABC reports the jury deliberated for less than a day. Both imply a short duration but differ in phrasing. The Guardian reports the trial lasted almost 7 weeks, whereas ABC states it lasted 6 weeks, a 1-week discrepancy. The Guardian mentions Meta's Instagram teen accounts, 2024, as a default protection feature, but ABC does not reference this specific product. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Disappearance of 4-year-old Gus Lamont from South Australian Outback Station. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gus Lamont was last seen on September 27, 2025, at Oak Park Station near Yunta, South Australia, around 5 p.m. playing on a mound of dirt. His disappearance was reported to police approximately 3 hours later by his grandmother, Josie Murray, on October 1, 2025. The 60,000-hectare Oak Park Station was searched extensively by police, volunteers, drones, and Aboriginal trackers, with no evidence found. In February 2026, police declared Gus's disappearance a major crime and ruled out theories that he wandered off or was abducted. Police identified a resident of Oak Park Station as a suspect in February 2026, though no arrests have been made. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Josie Murray's husband Shannon is among family members no longer cooperating with police, but ABC does not mention him specifically. News Kamau reports police returned to the site in May 2026 due to rainfall, while ABC does not mention this specific return. ABC describes the initial police comment as Gus being playing in the sand with a shovel, while News Kamau specifies he was playing on a mound of dirt. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Sydney private school teacher charged with grooming a 14-year-old girl and accessing child abuse material. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Benjamin David Collinge, a 29-year-old casual music teacher at Newington College, was arrested on March 28, 2024, in Beecroft, Sydney's north, for allegedly grooming a 14-year-old girl and accessing child abuse material. Collinge allegedly posed as a 17-year-old boy on social media to contact the vulnerable 14-year-old girl, who was using an app affected by Australia's under-16 social media ban. Collinge offered the girl a not significant amount of money in exchange for sexually explicit material, with multiple messages exchanged between them. Police found child abuse material on an electronic device during a search of Collinge's Beecroft home. Collinge was charged with using a carriage service to groom someone under 16 and using a carriage service to access child abuse material. But not all outlets told the same story. No contradictions found between the two sources. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US-Iran conflict escalation, Trump's demands, and Australia's response amid Strait of Hormuz tensions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Donald Trump publicly criticized Australia during a White House cabinet meeting, calling it not great for not assisting sufficiently in the war against Iran, stating I was a little surprised by Australia, SMH, Thej, ABC. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese responded by stating Australia wasn't consulted before this action was undertaken and denied any unmet US requests, emphasizing Australia's role in supplying advanced medium-range air-to-air missiles to the UAE, SMH, Thej, ABC. Trump extended Iran's deadline to reopen the Strait of Hormuz until April 6, 2026, pausing energy infrastructure strikes for 10 days, claiming talks are going very well, SMH, ABC. Iran's Speaker Mohammad Bagher Ghalibaf congratulated pro-government protesters in Tehran, stating no one can issue an ultimatum to Iran and the Iranian people, SMH, ABC. US President Trump acknowledged sending Marines and paratroopers to the Middle East, with the Pentagon preparing options for ground-based operations against Iranian islands, SMH, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC reports Trump said Iran asked for 7 days for the pause, while SMH states Trump gave Iran a 10-day deadline without mentioning Iran's request, ABC versus SMH. SMH and Thej report Trump mocked British aircraft carriers as toys, but ABC does not mention this specific detail. SMH and ABC report Trump extended the deadline to April 6, but ABC's quote from Trump suggests Iran asked for 7 days, implying a possible misalignment in reporting the timeline, ABC versus SMH. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australian government's temporary fuel excise cut and its economic implications. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Australian government halved the fuel excise from 52.6 cents to 26.3 cents per litre for 3 months starting May 2024, saving motorists approximately 26.3 cents per litre or $19 on a 65-litre tank. Treasurer Jim Chalmers estimated the excise cut would cost the government about $1.5 billion, Guardian, to $2.55 billion, ABC, over 3 months, depending on demand. The fuel excise was last halved for 6 months in 2022 during the Ukraine war, with a 24.3 cent reduction passed to consumers after a 6-week lag, ACCC cited in ABC. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese announced the measure at a national cabinet meeting on May 2024, framing it as cost-of-living relief amid high fuel prices and shortages. Economists warn the excise cut could increase fuel demand, exacerbate shortages, and potentially lead the Reserve Bank of Australia, RBA, to raise interest rates again in May 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian states the excise cut costs $1.5 billion, while ABC reports the government estimates $2.55 billion in costs depending on demand. The Guardian attributes shortages to hoarding and doubled consumption, but ABC does not mention hoarding and focuses on demand surges from general consumption. ABC cites economist Chris Richardson warning the excise cut will keep inflation higher for longer, while The Guardian does not quote Richardson but emphasizes distributional fairness concerns instead. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. 2 teenage boys die in motorbike-bus collision on Sydney's restricted transitway, sparking calls for e-bike regulation. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 2 teenage boys, a 15-year-old rider and a 14-year-old passenger, died after their petrol trail bike collided with a bus on the Liverpool Parramatta Transitway, T-Way, near Restwell Road, Bosley Park, around 7:10 p.m. on Monday night. The motorbike became trapped underneath the bus, and the boys were pronounced dead at the scene by paramedics. The bus driver, a 48-year-old male, was uninjured but taken to hospital for mandatory testing. No bus passengers were injured. Fairfield City Mayor Frank Carbone publicly criticised the NSW government's handling of e-bikes on the T-Way, calling for stricter enforcement and regulation. Police are investigating the crash and have asked for witnesses, including dashcam footage or CCTV, to come forward. But not all outlets told the same story. SMH initially reported the boys were riding a petrol trail bike, but Mayor Carbone's social media post suggested the accident involved e-bikes, which was not confirmed by either source. The ABC did not explicitly state the type of bike, petrol trail bike or e-bike, in its headline or body text, unlike SMH, which initially reported petrol trail bike but later referenced Mayor Carbone's e-bike claim. This story was covered by ABC News and Sydney Morning Herald. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Middle East conflict disrupts global supply chains, threatening Australia's food and medicine security. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Michael Hampson, Norco CEO, warned the conflict fallout could make COVID look like a tea party, with food shortages looming if unresolved within the next week or two. Fertilizer costs have doubled due to the Middle East conflict, impacting Australian farmers. Diesel shortages threaten key planting and harvesting windows, with farmers hoarding fuel to keep machinery running. Australian standard white wheat prices surged to a 20-month high of $259 per metric ton. Australia imports about 90% of its medicines, with nearly 400 drugs currently in short supply, including 37 deemed critical. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states petrol prices are climbing towards $3.4 per litre, while Guardian does not mention this specific price range. News Kamau mentions milk shortages may not be immediate, but Guardian clarifies shortages are unlikely at present but price hikes are expected. News Kamau reports Westpac modelling for inflation peaking at 5.5% by mid-2026, while Guardian does not reference this specific inflation projection. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. NSW introduces laws to crush illegal high-speed e-bikes amid safety concerns. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. NSW government will introduce legislation to seize and crush e-bikes operating over 25 km per hour, modelled after WA's existing laws. New roadside dyno units will detect e-bikes exceeding the 25 km per hour speed limit in NSW. Transport Minister John Graham stated, "If it behaves like a motorbike, it's probably illegal and could end up in the crusher." A two-day safety blitz in NSW issued 170 fines for illegal e-bikes. Queensland will restrict e-mobility devices to riders over 16, enforce a 10 km per hour footpath speed limit, and require learners' licenses. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Queensland's laws will require CTP insurance and motorbike licenses for more powerful devices, but The Guardian does not specify this detail. The Guardian mentions a 40 e-bikes incident on Sydney Harbour Bridge, while News Kamau does not reference this specific number or event. News Kamau says Queensland's laws will be tabled later this week, but The Guardian does not confirm the exact timing beyond later this week. This story was covered by The Guardian and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Romanian nationals charged for stealing wallets from elderly Queensland shoppers via scam. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. 3 Romanian nationals, a 49-year-old man, a 29-year-old woman, and a 42-year-old man, were arrested in 8 Mile Plains on the 27th of March, 2024 for allegedly targeting elderly victims, aged 70 to 94, at Queensland shopping centres. Victims were distracted by claims of dropped wallets while using ATMs or paying for groceries in Kenmore, Chermside, Strathpine, North Lakes, Buddina, Caloundra, and Laidley. Police seized approximately $20,000 from a unit complex in 8 Mile Plains during the arrests. The 49-year-old man and 29-year-old woman were charged with multiple counts of fraud and stealing, 5 counts of fraud, 4 counts of stealing, and 2 counts of enter with intent for the 49-year-old, 8 counts of fraud and 4 counts of stealing for the 29-year-old, and refused bail. The 42-year-old man was charged with 1 count of stealing and bailed to appear in Southport Magistrates Court on the 8th of April, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC states the 49-year-old man was charged with 5 counts of fraud, 4 counts of stealing and 2 counts of enter with intent, while News Kamau only lists numerous counts of fraud and stealing without specifying enter with intent counts. ABC mentions the 29-year-old woman was charged with 8 counts of fraud, 4 counts of stealing and 2 counts of enter with intent, but News Kamau does not mention the enter with intent charges for her. ABC states the trio appeared in Brisbane Magistrates Court on the 28th of March, while News Kamau says they fronted Brisbane Court on Saturday, no specific date mentioned. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. ABC staff strike over pay and conditions dispute with management. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. ABC staff went on a 24-hour strike starting at 11 a.m. Australian Eastern Daylight Time on Wednesday, the first in 2 decades. The strike was triggered by a majority, 60%, of staff voting no to the ABC's latest 3-year Enterprise Bargaining Agreement, EBA, pay offer. The rejected pay offer included a 3.5% pay rise in the first year and 3.25% in the subsequent 2 years, plus a $1,000 one-off bonus for eligible staff. ABC Managing Director Hugh Marks apologized to audiences and staff for the strike, calling it very unfortunate and stating he was sorry. BBC content, reruns, and federal parliament statements replaced local ABC programming during the strike, with emergency broadcasts remaining on air. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the total pay rise over 3 years is 3.5% plus 3.25% plus 3.25% 10%, while Article 2 only mentions 3.5% plus 3.25% 6.75% without clarifying the third year's rate. Article 1 includes a quote from Marx saying the offer would amount to a pay rise above inflation for some workers, but Article 2 does not repeat this exact phrasing. Article 1 notes the MEAA's initial pay demand was 5.5%, but Article 2 does not explicitly state this figure in the same context. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Queensland Government selection of Rockhampton's Fitzroy River for 2032 Olympic rowing canoeing venues. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Rockhampton's Fitzroy River is the sole venue under consideration for Olympic rowing and canoeing at the 2032 Brisbane Games, with no alternative sites remaining in contention. Newscamau, ABC Article 2, ABC Article 3. World Rowing President Jean-Christophe Roland and International Canoeing Federation President Thomas Konietzko publicly endorsed the Fitzroy River as a venue for the 2032 Games, ABC Article 2, ABC Article 3. The preferred field of play for the Fitzroy River venue includes a full 2-kilometre competition course with a southern finish line downstream toward the Fitzroy Barrage. Newscamau, ABC Article 2. The $7.1 billion budget for Olympic infrastructure includes funding for the Fitzroy River venue and other venues, with the total amount renegotiated in July 2024. Newscamau, ABC Article 2. Deputy Premier Jared Bleegey confirmed the Fitzroy River venue will be a permanent legacy facility, not temporary. Newscamau, ABC Article 3. But not all outlets told the same story. Newscamau states the Fitzroy River venue's preferred field of play will not require dramatic-driven changes, while ABC Article 3 reports that significant works like widening and dredging are needed for consistent water flow. Newscamau claims the Fitzroy River venue is contained within our $7.1 billion budget without mentioning potential additional costs, while ABC Article 3 implies the feasibility study found significant upgrades may exceed initial expectations. ABC Article 2 states World Rowing and ICF presidents publicly backed the Fitzroy River venue, but ABC Article 3 reports they are not ready to give the go-ahead and remain committed to further assessments. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Tottenham Hotspur fires interim manager Igor Tudor amid relegation crisis. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Tottenham Hotspur parted ways with interim manager Igor Tudor after 7 league matches and 44 days in charge. Tudor was hired on February 14, 2024, with a contract until the end of the season following Thomas Frank's sacking. Tottenham lost 5 of Tudor's 7 league matches, including a 3-0 home defeat to Nottingham Forest on March 22, 2024. Tottenham sits 1 point above the Premier League relegation zone with 7 games remaining in the season. Tudor's final match in charge was a 3-0 loss to Nottingham Forest on March 22, 2024. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC mentions Tudor's first match was a 4-1 loss to Arsenal, while Guardian does not specify the score of Tudor's first match beyond it being a loss. ABC lists Roberto De Zerbi, Eddie Hutter, Sean Dyche, and Ryan Mason as potential replacements, while Guardian does not mention Ryan Mason or Harry Redknapp's interest. ABC states Tudor lost 5 of his 7 league matches, while Guardian states he took 1 point from 5 league matches, implying 4 losses. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Iran's control of Strait of Hormuz shipping during US-Israel war on Iran. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Strait of Hormuz saw a 95% drop in daily traffic, from ~138 ships day pre-war to ~5-6 ships day, since February 28, 2024, per Joint Maritime Information Center and ABC Lloyd's list. Iran has established a safe corridor near Larak Island, northern Iranian waters, for vessel transit, diverting ships from the central shipping lane, as reported by Lloyd's List and ABC. More than 20 ships have been attacked or suffered near misses in the region since the conflict began, including the Palau-flagged Skylight tanker, Indian crew deaths, per Guardian and ABC. Iran's IRGC has imposed a de facto toll booth system, with at least 2 vessels reportedly paying $2 million, £1.5 million, for transit, per Guardian and ABC, Aladdin Borajerdi's quote. Iran's crude oil exports averaged 1.6 million barrels per day, March 1 to 23, per Tanker Tracker's data cited by ABC and Guardian's reference to Lloyd's List. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports 100 ships exited the Gulf and 40 entered in March, totaling 138 ships for the month, while ABC states only 150 ships transited March 1 to 26, including 46 tankers. The Guardian cites Lloyd's List saying no vessels have been damaged since March 22, but ABC does not provide a specific date cutoff for attacks or damages. The Guardian mentions Iran's toll payments were made in Chinese yuan due to US-EU sanctions, while ABC does not specify currency for the $2 million tolls. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: Australia's fuel crisis and national cabinet response to Middle East war disruptions. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Prime Minister Anthony Albanese is convening a second national cabinet meeting on Monday, or this week, to coordinate a national response to the fuel crisis, with state and territory leaders involved, ABC, Thij, Newscamau, SMH, ABC. As of recent reports, 470 to 520 service stations across Australia are without at least one type of fuel, ABC, Thij, Newscamau, SMH, ABC. The Strait of Hormuz closure due to the Iran war has disrupted about 25% of the world's oil supply, driving panic buying and price spikes, Thij, Newscamau, ABC. Australia's 2 remaining oil refineries are operating at full capacity, primarily producing petrol, with limited diesel refining capacity, SMH, ABC. The federal government has secured additional oil shipments. 6 cancelled tankers have been replaced, plus 3 extra tankers, equating to 5 to 6 days of national diesel petrol consumption, Thij, SMH, ABC. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Newscamau report 470 to 520 stations without fuel, while Thij and SMH report 474 stations without fuel as of Wednesday afternoon, minor discrepancy in exact numbers. Thij states 6 of 81 shipments were cancelled, while ABC and SMH do not specify the total number of shipments but confirm 6 were replaced, no direct contradiction, but inconsistency in framing. Premier Chris Minns, NSW, told Newscamau there were 32 stations without fuel in NSW, while ABC reported 48 stations without at least one fuel type in NSW, discrepancy in exact numbers. This story was covered by ABC News, news.com.au, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker: 2 men acquitted of raping intoxicated woman picked up while waiting for Uber in Darwin. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Panormitis Charalampis and Michael Vruvis were acquitted on all charges of sexual intercourse without consent by a jury in the Northern Territory Supreme Court after almost 7 hours of deliberation. The incident occurred on January 14, 2024, when the 2 men picked up a woman outside Mayberry nightclub in Darwin's CBD at approximately 3:30 a.m. The woman was allegedly severely intoxicated with a blood alcohol concentration between 0.1 and 0.15 when she arrived at her apartment with the men. CCTV footage showed the woman crawling and falling out of the car, needing assistance to walk, and later lying on the ground. Both men faced 4 counts each of sexual intercourse without consent in the Northern Territory Supreme Court. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the woman's memory was completely wrong about being picked up and carried, while Article 2 does not explicitly refute this but focuses more on the fragmented nature of her memory. Article 1 mentions the woman's behavior, e.g., walking naked onto the balcony, was used by the defense to argue she did not believe she was being raped, but Article 3 does not mention this specific behavior in the same context. Article 1 states the defense argued the woman may have regretted the night and conceived a different narrative, while Article 3 does not explicitly mention this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia warns Israel against occupying southern Lebanon amid escalating conflict with Hezbollah. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Australia's Foreign Minister Penny Wong warned Israel against occupying southern Lebanon in calls with Israeli Foreign Minister Gideon Saar on March 2024. Israel's Defense Minister Israel Katz announced plans to create a security zone between the Israeli border, Blue Line, and the Litani River in southern Lebanon. Over 1,000 Lebanese civilians have been killed since Israel began striking Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, including more than 100 children and 40 medics, Lebanon's health ministry data. More than 1 million Lebanese civilians have been displaced due to the conflict in southern Lebanon. Australia has urged Australians in Lebanon to leave now if safe to do so, and estimates around 15,000 Australians reside in Lebanon. But not all outlets told the same story. ABC and Newscomer both report over 1,000 Lebanese deaths, but ABC specifies 1,000+, including 120 children and 40 medics, while Newscomer says 100+ children without the 40 medics figure. The Guardian reports Israel amended laws in February 2024 to overturn West Bank land sales bans, but ABC and Newscomer do not mention this specific legislative change. ABC states 2 Israeli soldiers and 1 civilian were killed in Lebanon, while Newscomer and The Guardian do not mention the civilian death from misfired artillery. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate's Mar-a-Lago visit and Trump Tower development ethics controversy. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Gold Coast Mayor Tom Tate received gifts from the Trump Organization during a February 2024 visit to Mar-a-Lago, including meals, accommodation, and airport transfers valued over $500. The Trump Organization's gifts to Tom Tate were declared in his latest register of interests, required for gifts over $500 or multiple gifts totaling $500. Tom Tate met with U.S. President Donald Trump and Eric Trump at Mar-a-Lago between February 12 and February 14, 2024, as part of a broader overseas trip. A $1.5 billion deal for a Trump-branded resort in Surfers Paradise was signed between Australian developer Altus CEO David Young and the Trump Organization's Eric Trump shortly after Tate's visit. The proposed Gold Coast Trump Tower would be a 91-story development featuring a 6-star resort hotel, 270 luxury apartments, a retail plaza, and a beach club. But not all outlets told the same story. Article 1 states the Trump Organization paid for Tom Tate's flights, while Article 2 notes the exact cost of his flights was yet to be revealed and ratepayers paid for them. Article 1 mentions Tom Tate's trip included visits to Italy, the UAE, and the USA, while Article 2 only lists the US, including Los Angeles for the Day USA trade event, as part of his overseas trip. Article 1 does not mention the Day USA trade event in Los Angeles as part of Tate's trip, whereas Article 2 explicitly states he attended it. This story was covered by ABC News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Dietary factors and genetic influences on dementia and brain health prevention. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Mind Diet, Mediterranean diet intervention for neurodegenerative delay, is associated with a 19% reduced odds of developing mild cognitive impairment or dementia according to a 2019 study by Scientia professor Karin Arnsti, UNSW Aging Futures Institute. The Mind Diet includes leafy greens, nuts, berries, olive oil, poultry, fish, whole grains, and limits red meat, butter, cheese, fried foods, and sweets. A 2024 Lancet Commission report identified 14 modifiable risk factors that could prevent or delay 45% of dementia cases, including high LDL cholesterol, 7% influence, and untreated vision loss, 2%. The MIND diet was linked to a 20% preservation of gray matter over 12 years in middle-aged and older adults, corresponding to a 2.5-year delay in brain aging, observational study. The APOE4 gene variant, present in about 1 in 4 people, increases dementia risk and was studied in relation to meat consumption and cognitive decline. But not all outlets told the same story. The SMH The Age articles state the MIND diet reduces dementia risk by 19% according to Arnstie's 2019 study, while the ABC article does not provide a specific percentage but mentions a 15 to 22% reduction in dementia risk for Mediterranean-style diets in a meta-analysis. The SMH The Age articles emphasize that the MIND diet should be added as a 15th factor for dementia prevention, while the ABC article acknowledges the evidence but does not explicitly call for its inclusion in the Lancet Commission's list. The SMH The Age articles highlight that the MIND diet's benefits are supported by objective brain scan evidence showing 20% more gray matter retention, while the ABC article notes that observational studies cannot prove cause and effect and that self-reported diet data is unreliable. This story was covered by ABC News, Sydney Morning Herald and The Age. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Nicolás Maduro's federal court appearance in New York for narco-terrorism charges. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Nicolás Maduro and his wife Cilia Flores are scheduled to appear in a Manhattan federal court on Thursday, the 14th of March, 2019, for a narco-terrorism case after their capture by U.S. Special Forces on the 3rd of January, 2021 in Caracas, Venezuela. Maduro and Flores pleaded not guilty during their 5th of January arraignment in New York. Maduro and Flores are accused of spearheading a corrupt government that protected and promoted illegal activity, including drug trafficking, per U.S. charging papers. The U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control, OFAC, initially granted Maduro a waiver on the 9th of January, 2021 to accept money from Venezuela's government for legal fees, then reversed course 3 hours later. Maduro and Flores are being held at a detention center in Brooklyn, New York, and neither has requested bail. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Article 1, states OFAC reversed course on Maduro's defense funding waiver just 3 hours later after granting it, while ABC does not specify the timing of the reversal. The Guardian, Article 3, describes Maduro's appearance as visually humdrum and notes he wore a neon t-shirt under prison garb, but ABC does not mention the t-shirt detail. The Guardian, Article 1, reports that OFAC's reversal was communicated through Maduro's lawyers on the 26th of February, while ABC does not reference this specific date or legal filing. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. TGA proposes sunscreen regulation reforms amid SPF testing controversies. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The Therapeutic Goods Administration, TGA, proposed sweeping reforms to Australian sunscreen regulations in response to SPF testing inconsistencies, with public consultation open for feedback. Choice tested 20 popular SPF 50 and SPF 50+ sunscreens in June 2023 and found 16 failed to meet their advertised SPF claims, with results ranging from SPF 4 to SPF 43 instead of the labeled SPF 50+. Ultraviolet's Australian sunscreen Lean Screen 50+ tested at SPF 4, while Kohl's SPF 50+ sunscreen UltraTube tested at SPF 43, according to Choice's accredited lab testing. Banana Boat Baby Zinc sunscreen lotion SPF 50+ tested at SPF 28, significantly below its labeled claim, per Choice's findings. Australia has the highest rates of skin cancer and melanoma globally, with around 2,000 people dying annually from these conditions, according to the TGA. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states Ultraviolet's Instagram post claimed testing costs up to $150,000 per product, while ABC does not mention this specific detail or cost. News Kamau reports the TGA found some product owners and manufacturers lacked an understanding about their legal obligations, but ABC does not reference this specific finding. News Kamau highlights the TGA's report stating current understanding of SPF values, combined with the variability of test results, while ABC does not quote this exact phrasing. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Australia's 2026 daylight saving transition dates and rules for ending DST in April. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. Daylight saving in Australia ends on the first Sunday of April annually. Clocks move back 1 hour on the end date, turning 3 a.m. local time to 2 a.m. Daylight saving ends on Sunday, April 5, 2026 in most Australian states and territories. Daylight saving begins again on Sunday, October 4, 2026 in Australia. Most states and territories observe daylight saving time. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian does not mention Easter Sunday alignment as a reason for the April 5 date, while ABC explicitly states it coincides with Easter Sunday. The Guardian does not provide comparative details on US-UK daylight saving rules, which ABC includes. The Guardian does not mention the assumption that weekend timing reduces disruption for schools' businesses, which ABC states. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Deadly Air Canada plane crash at LaGuardia Airport due to runway collision with fire truck. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. An Air Canada Express jet, Flight 8646, operated by Jazz Aviation, collided with a Port Authority fire truck at New York's LaGuardia Airport on Sunday night, October 27, 2024, around 11:45 p.m. local time. The crash occurred on runway 4 at LaGuardia Airport, killing both pilots Antoine Forrest, Air Canada pilot, and Mackenzie Gunther, co-pilot, Seneca College graduate 2023. The fire truck was responding to a reported odor issue on a United Airlines flight when the collision happened. The NTSB, National Transportation Safety Board, is investigating the crash, with Jennifer Homendy stating the runway alert system, ASDEX, did not trigger due to the fire truck lacking a transponder. The NTSB recovered the cockpit voice recorder and flight data recorder from the wreckage, with 25+ hours of cockpit recordings and 80+ hours of flight data being analyzed. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian reports NASA's aviation safety reporting system received dozens of anonymous pilot complaints about LaGuardia safety concerns, while other sources do not mention this system or these reports. The Guardian states the NTSB investigator was delayed 3 hours by security lines in Houston, but this detail is not mentioned in other sources. The Guardian reports the FAA and TSA staffing shortages were significant contributors to airport stress, but other sources do not emphasize this connection to the crash. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. Teenage assault on paramedic after stolen car crash in Melbourne. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A stolen Mazda 3, stolen from Mulgrave on March 21, collided with a Volkswagen Jetta at Nicholson St and Victoria Parade, Carlton, just before 6 a.m. on Saturday. 4 teenage males were travelling in the stolen Mazda 3, 2 fled the scene, while a 19-year-old and a 15-year-old were injured. A 66-year-old man and a 76-year-old woman from Terang were in the Volkswagen and taken to hospital as a precaution. The 15-year-old boy assaulted a paramedic during transport to hospital, requiring treatment for their injuries. Police are searching for the 2 boys who fled the scene and urged witnesses to contact Crime Stoppers. But not all outlets told the same story. News Kamau states the 19-year-old man assaulted the paramedic, but ABC states the 15-year-old boy assaulted the paramedic. ABC credits AAP, James Ross for the headline, but Newscomau does not mention any specific journalist or source for its headline. Newscomau explicitly mentions the Mazda was stolen on March 21, while ABC does not specify the exact date of the theft in its text, only implied. This story was covered by ABC News and news.com.au. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. IOC bans transgender women from female Olympic events via SRY gene testing starting 2028. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. The IOC announced a ban on transgender women competing in female Olympic events starting the 2028 Los Angeles Games, effective immediately for future Olympics. The new policy mandates a one-time SRY gene test, via saliva, cheek swab, or blood, to determine biological sex for female category eligibility. IOC President Kirsty Coventry stated the decision is based on scientific evidence showing males retain a performance advantage, 10 to 12% in running swimming, 20% plus in throwing jumping, greater than 100% in explosive power events, even after testosterone suppression. New Zealand's Laurel Hubbard was the first openly transgender athlete to compete at the Olympics, Tokyo 2021, in a different gender category to her birth sex. The IOC's 2021 framework on fairness, inclusion, and non-discrimination was reversed by Kirsty Coventry's leadership, scrapping prior guidance allowing transgender women to compete. But not all outlets told the same story. The IOC claims the SRY gene test is unintrusive and highly accurate, but medical experts like Dr. Ada Chung and Professor Paula Gerber call it unreliable and reductive. The Guardian reports the IOC's policy was influenced by US President Donald Trump's anti-trans policies, while ABC and the IOC explicitly state Kirsty Coventry prioritized the issue independently of Trump's actions. The Guardian notes the IOC's 2021 framework was scrapped with no public consultation, whereas ABC and the IOC frame it as a U-turn based on new scientific evidence and athlete surveys. This story was covered by ABC News and The Guardian. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis. Media Fact Checker. US court rulings hold Meta and Google liable for social media addiction and harm to minors. All source articles are linked in the description below. Here's what every outlet agrees on. A California jury found Meta and Google liable for negligence in designing addictive social media platforms, awarding $3 million, $4.3 million total, in damages to a 20-year-old plaintiff, KGM, in March 2025. Meta was ordered to pay $375 million in civil penalties in a New Mexico case for enabling child sexual exploitation and misleading users about platform safety, with the ruling issued on March 2025. The California case awarded $3 million in compensatory damages, $2.1 million to Meta, $900,000 to Google, and recommended an additional $3 million in punitive damages for malice, fraud, or oppression. The plaintiff, KGM, testified she began using YouTube at age 6 and Instagram at age 9, with her social media use peaking at 16 hours daily and leading to depression, self-harm, and body dysmorphia by age 13. Jurors in the California case found Meta and Google acted with malice, oppression, or fraud, a finding that supports punitive damages claims. But not all outlets told the same story. The Guardian, Van Badham, states Meta was found liable for 70% of harms in the California case, but ABC reports the jury assigned 70% liability to Meta without specifying the exact percentage of harm attribution. Meta's spokesperson claims KGM's mental health issues were profoundly complex and cannot be linked to a single app, while The Guardian, Article 10, highlights KGM's testimony that her mother was trying her best and not abusive, contradicting Meta's portrayal of her home life. YouTube disputed the plaintiff's usage records, claiming she averaged less than a minute per day, ABC, while the plaintiff testified she used the platform for up to 16 hours daily, multiple sources. This story was covered by ABC News, The Guardian, news.com.au, and SBS News. Subscribe to Media Fact Checker for daily Australian news analysis.